Hey everybody, welcome back to the 80s Slashers YouTube channel. In this video, we will be taking a look at the top 10 80s slashers that had the largest production budgets. Now, I thought this would be an interesting topic to discuss because typically films with the largest budgets are the ones that the movie studios either have the most faith in terms of quality or whatnot, when they get the script and or they just feel that their investment will be rewarded at the box office due to various um, reasons, like whether they're part of a follow-up sequel, or if there's like a director attached or an actor attached. There's various reasons why they assume that it will be a wise investment. So it's always interesting to take a look at these sorts of things, I thought. Now, looking ahead at this list of films that I have here, there is going to be a definite theme as to the types of films that were supported by the studios. But there, like always, when we do some of these lists, there is definitely some surprises. At least for me, that will be popping up in here. Now, even though this is a top 10, I actually have a total of 16 films that we will discuss. Basically, this is because there are four ties that we have, basically with some numerous films that had the same budget. So there's 10 spots in terms of monetary, budget numbers, but it's divided between 16 films. All right, so yeah, let's just jump right into this and start off by taking a look at the number 10 spot. All right, so coming in at number 10, with a budget of $3.5 million, we have the films Terror Train from 1980, Happy Birthday to Me from 1981, and Friday the 13th, Part 7, The New Blood from 1988. Now, looking at these three films, I guess there's nothing too surprising, I find here. It's interesting that we have a couple films that are basically, early 80s slashers within the same template that, once, the rise of the genre there. And then we have one, from the late 80s, that when, the genre is winding down. I guess of these three, Friday the 13th Part 7 is probably a little surprising. Maybe just because I know how the rest of this list is going to play out. It seems like the top end of this list. It feels like Part 7 of Friday the 13th would have been up there, but it's not. It's near the bottom of this list. So, yeah, I guess I just assumed that it had maybe more of a bigger budget. I view Terror Train and Happy Birthday to Me as pretty similar. I view those two films. I look at them and they seem like they're the same type of formula, same format. They look like they were made with the same amount of money. So that's not too surprising. So I guess it makes sense. Like I said, I guess Friday the 13th, I know some of the special effects and whatnot within that film. It just seems like it was cost more money to make, I guess. So I guess they did a really good job with Friday the 13th Part 7. It's not a film I particularly like a lot. It's my least favorite of the Friday 80s slashers films, but yeah, it seems like it should be worth, or should have been made with a little more money. That's just the way I view it. So I don't know. So I guess that one is a little surprising for me here. All right, let's go on and take a look at number 9. All right, so coming at number 9 with a budget of $3.7 million, we have from 1983, Curtains, and from 1987, The Outing. Now, I, I'm pretty surprised actually that both of these films had a larger budget than all three of the previous films that we talked about: Terror Train, Happy Birthday to Me, and Friday the 13th Part 7. I just when you think of those films, I feel like all three of those seem like they would have cost more to make than these two. Now, Curtains makes a little bit of sense because I view Curtains as kind of, I always say it's kind of like a classy slasher film. It doesn't follow the typical formula like the cheap and easy 80s slasher. It seems like it's more of a deliberate horror film that happens to be a slasher, but like they took more efforts to make it a nice looking film, better cinematography, better writing, editing, all the steps involved in making a film. It seems like Curtains, took their time to try to, make a little classier of a film. They have like a good cast, some stronger actors, older actors, not teenagers. So yeah, I can see how that would, maybe bring up the production costs a little bit. So I guess that does kind of make sense. The Outing, again, it's kind of a supernatural film. So there's some special effects. I'm guessing that's where the money was spent, maybe. In these later '80s films. With the rise of the supernatural slasher and whatnot. They needed to, I guess, spend some more money on some of these effects that they were using. So I don't know. If I was to guess, that's where the money went to. But yeah, again, kind of like I said, in comparison to the first three films we talked about, kind of surprising here. So yeah. All right, let's move on to number 8. All right, so coming to number 8 with a budget of $4 million even, we have Friday the 13th, Part 3 from 1982, and A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors from 1987. Now, compared to the last two films we just discussed, again, I'm surprised that these films only cost, what, $300,000 more to make than The Outing? Kind of, I don't know, that's kind of shocking to me, especially when you factor in that, Nightmare on Elm Street 3 had some really impressive practical effects. It feels like a big popcorn blockbuster type movie. It's a later film, '87. When these films were really bringing in the money at this point. Friday 3 was a big success, or I'm sorry, Nightmare 3 was a big success at that time. So the fact that they were able to make that film for only $300,000 more than The Outing or Curtains, uh, surprising. And then, of course, you look at Friday the 13th Part 3. Now, again, this is like an early '80s slasher, so, I'm not surprised the budgets were a little lower because they were still trying to follow that cheap, the cheap formula that, the first Friday the 13th made, make it as cheap as you can and hope you get big returns. But Friday 3 was a 3D film, filmed with the 3D cameras, and you think that would be a huge expense. I don't know. I'm definitely surprised that these, not that they're $4 million. I guess that seems right, but I guess I'm just surprised that they only cost 300,000 more than Curtains in The Outing. It seems odd to me. Um, so yeah, I guess all I can say is that both of these films did a really good job of keeping their costs down, and I don't know, I guess they knew what they were doing, and I guess it paid off it definitely paid off at the box office. That's yeah, pretty good budgetary restraint, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, definitely surprising coming in this low on the list, especially just for those two films. So all right, let's move on and take a look at number 7. All right, so coming to number 7, with a oddly specific budget of $4,319,001. We have Mortuary from 1983. Now, again, this film I find surprising and not surprising that it's where it is in these rankings here. It's surprising because this is not your like it's not a very well known slasher film. It's not one that when people, the general public, think back on these 80s slashers films when they're thinking of like the Freddys and the Freddys and the Jasons. Nobody, if you're not really into the subgenre, you don't really know much about Mortuary. So in that regard, it stands out, on this list. But again, similar to Curtains, uh, Mortuary has that feel of like a real film, like a real horror film, like the effort was put in. It looks really good. It's a good looking film. They took their time with the writing and the editing and the directing and the cinematography and like the script and the casting. They had a really good cast in this film. Obviously, Christopher George and his wife Linda Day George were involved in this. A young Bill Paxton. He was young. He probably didn't get paid a lot for this film, but Christopher George and Linda Day George, they probably commanded a little bit of a hefty salary, you would think. Um, so in that regard, it's not overly surprising, I guess. Uh, yeah, I don't know. It's just this is a weird placement. I don't the amount is funny, like $4,319,001. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say about that. It's just kind of it is what it is, I guess, where it is on this list. So yeah, number 7 is Mortuary. All right, let's move on and take a look at number 6. All right, so coming at number 6, uh, at a budget of $5 million, we have April Fool's Day from 1986, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, and Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan from 1989. Now, this seems about right for me. All 3 of these films seem like they're all on about the same level of production. I guess April Fool's Day maybe feels a little bit like maybe like a little tier below just because it doesn't have all the some of the crazy special effects I don't think that the other 2 films probably had. But yeah, it seems about right. The 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 filmmakers for the all 3 of these films clearly were, I think, supporting these films. Obviously, the Friday film and the Halloween film at this point had a huge track record. So, whatever they felt they needed to make their film, the studios were probably saying, "Sure, here's the money, go ahead," because they knew they were gonna make their money back and some at the box office, which they did. April Fool's Day, I guess, amongst these 3 films is kind of the standout because it's not part of a franchise, it's not a sequel, but it had some it had all the elements that you would think would make a good 80s slasher. It had like the holiday theme in the title. It had a good cast. It had an actress that was in um Friday the 13th Part 2. It had an actress that was in Deborah Foreman, who was in Valley Girl and a bunch of other pretty famous 80s slash or 80s just regular movies at the time. It had Biff from Back to the Future. It had some names to it. So you put that in, you put the holiday theme, the kills and whatnot. It's not surprising that the studio was like, yeah, we're probably gonna make some money on this. So, $5 million budget for each of these. Like I said, it sounds about right. And again, like I said, we're getting into the phase now where you'll see most of these, a lot of the money that was put behind these films was for these type of sequels or franchise type films. That's especially in the late 80s. This is where all the money was coming from because they were starting to make a lot of money at this time in like in 80, 88, 89. They were pretty successful. So yeah, so that's where we're at number 6 here. So let's move on and take a look at number 5. All right, so coming to number 5 with a budget of $5.5 million, we have Visiting Hours from 1982. Now this is another surprise. This is the last surprise on this list for me, anyways. Again, this fits right in with Mortuary and Curtains for me. I, it's surprising because it's not as well known of a film. When people looking back, it is a well known film, but it's not like the one that people when they think of an 80s slasher, it's just not anywhere near people's lists like that. It's not a franchise film, it's not a sequel, it's kind of a standalone thing. But again, it has that real movie feel. Like you can tell like the money was spent on making a real film. They wanted to not cut corners and make a you know, cheap little slasher flick where, put as few dollars as we can and try to hope for a big return at the box office. This was an attempt at like making a real solid horror film. And again, this had like a really solid cast. This is 1982, and they casted William Shatner is in this film. I assume William Shatner in 1982 couldn't be had for pennies. He probably commanded a little bit of money. Film also stars Michael Ironside. Again, fantastic actor. Again, probably didn't you know do this role for cheap. So I assume a lot of the budget probably went towards casting. But again, like I said, it just has a solid look to the film. Yeah, it's not one of those, cheapy slasher films that have been, that were made in the early 80s, this is something else. So, even though it's surprising, it's not like a super well-known film in terms of, like the big franchises and whatnot. It's a good solid film, so it kind of makes sense that it's here. All right, let's move on to number 4. All right, so coming to number 4 with a budget of $6 million, we have Halloween 5: The Revenge of Michael Myers from 1989. So, yeah, now we're basically getting to all that's basically left here is like the big franchise titles, Obviously, studios at this point were clearly behind this film in hopes of continuing to cash in. All these the the Nightmare films, the Friday films, the Halloween, like the big 3 franchises. At this point, whatever they put out, they knew they were gonna make their money back. The question was how much were they gonna like. Some of these films did really really well. Some did pretty good, and I think that was the only question at this point. Like we'll spend $6 million on this film. Are we gonna make, is it gonna bring us a $10 million profit or a 20, a $30 million profit? That's probably the only question they had. They knew they were gonna make their money back. So yeah, like I said, at this time, the franchise films were killing it at the box office. So yeah, seeing Halloween 5 come in here at like the fourth, the fourth biggest budget in all of the 80s slashers is not surprising to me at all. Yeah. All right, let's just move on and go to number 3. All right, so coming to number 3 with an $8 million budget is A Nightmare on Elm Street 5: Dream Child from 1989. Yeah, again, no surprise here. Same as Halloween 5. The studios knew what they were doing. Now even though even though I view this as a terrible film, of course that's my opinion, of course, but um, it's still at the time this was obviously still a wise investment. Um, these films were printing money. It and by looking at the end product of this film, I don't even think that the studio cared that much as long as they were able to put a Nightmare on Elm Street title on a film, make sure the character of Freddy Krueger was in it, and stick his face all over the place. I don't think they cared what the movie was about, and that was pretty evident in like I said, in the finished product. The way I view it anyway. But yeah, this film did really well. They made their money back for sure, and Yeah, this is what the genre was at this point in the 80s. It was waning for sure. Like 89 was not as successful as a couple years prior, but they're still making a ton of money. All right, let's take a look at number 2. All right, so coming in number 2 with a budget of $9 million, we have Child's Play from 1988. Um, Again, no surprise, but at the time, I guess the one thing that is kind of surprising is because in hindsight, we look back on this and like, of course, Child's Play, it's a huge film. But at the time, 1988, this wasn't a franchise film. This wasn't a sequel. This was a standalone film that clearly the studios had to have known what they had with this film. I don't know if they did market research or what they did, but they they threw a lot of money at this film, and it paid off. Like they knew they knew that this was going to be a huge hit, a big success, and it was. It made a ton of money at the box office, and it was successful enough that they went, and it's a franchise that's still going today. I think the last movie was in 2021 or 2020. I don't know. Whenever the last movie was, it's still going. They're still making movies in this franchise, and yeah, I guess when someone presents an idea of a slasher film with a doll that's a little kid doll killing people, it makes wisecracks like Freddy Krueger. I guess the people in charge knew that this was a gold mine, and they were right. So yeah, $9 million for a debut slasher film about a killing doll. I don't know. It's they knew what they were doing, and it paid off, I guess. So yeah, not surprising that it's here. Obviously, again, it's a film that looks really good. You can tell like the production is really high quality. This is a big blockbuster movie theater popcorn type film that just happens to be within the horror subgenre of a slasher film. So yeah, it certainly makes sense. All right, let's move on to number 1 and the most expensive 80s slasher that was ever made. All right, so yeah, so coming number 1 at a budget of $13 million is A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the Dream Master from 1988. Now, yeah, like I said, ever since we got basically number 6 on this list, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, but mostly all of these films have been these big budget franchise follow-up sequel films, and um yeah, Nightmare 4, I guess it was just 1988 was the prime for making money within this genre. The best films in this genre, in my opinion, were in the early 80s. They were making them for super cheap, knocking them out, and that's kind of part of the charm for me. These low budget, they're doing them all with practical effects, and I don't know. I something about the early 80s films obviously are great, but these late 80s films, they also have a style, a type, and it's these big blockbuster popcorn movie theater type horror films with lots of practical or like CGI, I guess, whatever you want to call it back then. Lots of effects that cost a lot of money. The films look good. They're slick. They don't look like low budget, amateur type grindhouse kind of films that some of these early 80s films were. This was a good looking film. The quality of it can be debated. We won't get into that, but it's clearly a good looking film. It was made properly with the right resources, and yeah, $13 million is a big budget for a slasher film, really. So yeah, it's no big surprise that it was building up to this. Part 3 was on this list. Part 5 was on this list, a little lower because again, like 89 is the genre started to wane a little bit, so the profits weren't rolling in as much. So it's not surprising that they put the budget down a little bit. But yeah, I think 1988, it was just the prime for this, and the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise is was the one that was making the most money, so it's not surprising that it was the one that had the most money behind it. Um, yeah, so yeah, again, not a big surprise. So yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street 4, the is the one film that is the costs the most money in the whole genre. So pretty interesting. So yeah, if we just take a quick look here, all these films, it's like I said, there's a lot of a definite theme when you look at these. You know, there's a couple early 80s films that's snuck in. Basically like just at the bottom of this list, like the only two that really fit. Um, I should say three, I guess, because Terror Train, Happy Birthday to Me, and Friday the 13th Part 3. They're like the typical early 80s slasher. And, you know, a lot of the ones that, you know, we know and love, like the original Friday the 13th, Part 2, and, you know, Prom Night, and you know, My Bloody Valentine, Graduation Day, all those films, they're made for less than $1 million or around $1 million, it depends. But that's about where they lived, you know, that budget range. And you know they some of them did really well. So they, you know, in terms of profitability, you know, these films didn't some of these films didn't do the best. Some of those earlier ones, because the budgets were so low, like, you know, like your Terror Train, Happy Birthday to Me. But that's basically the only ones that made this list. It seems as the decade went on, and you know the type of film changed more towards, you know, the Nightmare on Elm Streets of the genre. That's where the money went, and like these early 80s slasher style of films kind of went away. We still got them occasionally throughout the 80s, but the money was going to these type of films. As you can see, you know, on this list, we have how many franchises we got? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, if you include Child's Play as a franchise film eventually. So yeah, it's pretty dominated by these franchise films, and you know, I guess that's what people wanted. That's what people were wanting to watch. So yeah, I don't know, kind of an interesting thing. Um, so yeah, so that's basically it. That's just a quick look at the you know, the top 10 or the top 16, I guess, 80s slashers in terms of you know, the biggest budgets. So yeah, so hopefully you guys like this. I think I'll do another one of these videos on, you know, maybe the you know, the top 10 films with, you know, the box office returns, maybe some with like you know, take those like the budgets and the box office and do one on like profitability, most profitable films. We'll see. This is kind of fun. I like to look at this stuff, and just it kind of gives an overview of the genre, which I like to do. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed that, and yeah, until next time. All right. See ya.